Today, we're setting sail on a journey to explore what differentiates a typhoon from a cyclone. You might be surprised to learn that typhoons and cyclones are, in fact, the same weather phenomenon. Their names simply change depending on where they occur, much like you'd call a baguette a roll if you're in the north of England, or a cob if you've popped down to the Midlands. They also actually fall under the tropical storms umbrella, as well as hurricanes. Did you know that tsunamis aren't considered to be tropical storms, but natural weather events related to undersea volcanic eruptions and/or earthquakes? Typhoons and cyclones are much different, that they earned their own terms. So let's dive deeper to understand the characteristics of typhoons and cyclones. When we talk about typhoons, we're referring to a specific kind of storm. These are not your average rain showers or thunderstorms. Typhoons are powerful, large-scale weather systems that bring fierce winds, torrential rainfall, and often significant destruction in their wake. The term typhoon is primarily used to describe these storms when they occur in the North Pacific Ocean, particularly to the west of the international dateline. However, you may be surprised to learn that typhoons are essentially the same kind of storm as hurricanes and cyclones. The difference in naming simply comes down to where on our planet these storms take place. Typhoons form when warm, moist air over the ocean rises, creating an area of low pressure beneath it. Surrounding air then rushes in to fill this low-pressure space, but as it moves, it begins to spin due to the rotation of the Earth, a phenomenon known as the Coriolis effect. As this spinning mass of air collects more moisture and heat from the ocean surface, it grows and intensifies, eventually developing into a fully fledged typhoon. Now let's talk about size and strength. Typhoons are no small feat. These storms can stretch hundreds of miles in diameter and reach wind speeds of over 75 miles per hour. At their most extreme, typhoons can produce winds exceeding 150 miles per hour, making them a force to be reckoned with. But it's not just the wind that makes typhoons dangerous. The heavy rainfall they bring can cause severe flooding, and the storm surge, a sudden rise in sea level, can devastate coastal areas. So, typhoons are essentially large rotating storms that form over the North Pacific Ocean, powered by warm, moist air. They bring with them high winds, heavy rain, and often a significant storm surge. They're part of a family of storms that also includes hurricanes and cyclones, their Atlantic and Indian Ocean counterparts. So, that's a typhoon in a nutshell. But what about cyclones? Cyclones, on the other hand, have their own unique characteristics. Just like typhoons, cyclones are a type of severe weather system known for their powerful winds and heavy rains. However, the term cyclone is typically used to describe these storms when they occur in the South Pacific and Indian Oceans. Cyclones form through a process quite similar to that of typhoons. They begin as a tropical disturbance over warm ocean waters, usually around the equator. As the warm, moist air rises, it creates a low-pressure area beneath it. Surrounding air then rushes in to fill this area, and in turn, it also gets warmed and rises. This process repeats, creating a cycle of warm air rising and cooler air rushing in, which eventually forms a cyclone. The strength and size of cyclones can vary greatly. On one end of the spectrum, you have tropical depressions, which are relatively mild with wind speeds less than 39 miles per hour. On the other end, you have severe tropical cyclones, which can reach wind speeds of over 156 miles per hour, equivalent to a Category 5 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. These severe cyclones can cause widespread destruction and are a serious threat to coastal communities. The size of a cyclone can also vary, with the average cyclone measuring around 300 miles in diameter. However, some cyclones can grow to be much larger. For instance, Cyclone Yasi, which hit Australia in 2011, was around 475 miles in diameter. It's worth noting that while cyclones and typhoons are similar in many ways, there are a few key differences. For one, they occur in different parts of the world. Additionally, cyclones rotate clockwise in the southern hemisphere, while typhoons rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. So, while similar in many ways, typhoons and cyclones do have a few key differences. But why do we call them different names if they're essentially the same thing? An excellent question that brings us to a fascinating aspect of these weather phenomena. The naming of typhoons and cyclones is a captivating blend of history, culture, and geography. Let's delve into it. Typhoons and cyclones are indeed the same type of storm, but their names are influenced by the region where they occur. The term typhoon is used in the Northwest Pacific, primarily in East Asia, and it's derived from the Cantonese word typhoon, meaning great wind. The term cyclone, on the other hand, is used in the South Pacific and Indian Ocean, and it originates from the Greek kyklon, which means moving in a circle, whirling around. Fascinating, isn't it? Now, how about the individual names given to each storm? This practice started in the mid-20th century as a way to streamline communications and avoid confusion. It's much easier to remember and refer to a storm by a unique name rather than a series of numbers or technical terms. But where do these names come from? Well, in the beginning, storms were named arbitrarily. Some were named after the place they did the most damage, some after saints, and some even after the meteorologist's wife. However, this method was neither systematic nor fair, and it led to a lot of confusion. So in the late 1950s, the United States began using female names systematically for storms. This practice was later adopted by other countries, and in 1979, male names were also introduced into the mix. Today, the World Meteorological Organization maintains a list of names, which are contributed by countries in the region where the storms occur. These lists are recycled every 6 years, but if a storm is particularly devastating, its name is retired out of respect for the lives it impacted. In the western North Pacific and the South China Sea, where typhoons occur, each participating country contributes names to a list. The names are often those of animals, flowers, astrological signs, or even personal names. In other regions like the Atlantic and eastern North Pacific, names are alphabetical and alternate between male and female. In the Indian Ocean region, 8 countries, including India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Myanmar, Oman, Pakistan, Thailand, and Bangladesh, contribute a set of names. These names are meant to be neutral and easy to pronounce, avoiding any cultural or political sensitivities. The practice of naming storms helps us humanize these powerful forces of nature, making them more relatable, easier to track, and easier to remember. It's a fascinating blend of culture, history, and science, isn't it? So the names typhoon and cyclone are more about geography than they are about the storms themselves. So, to wrap things up, we've journeyed through the world of typhoons and cyclones, unearthing their unique characteristics and demystifying their naming conventions. Starting off with typhoons, we've learned that they are essentially the same as hurricanes and cyclones, but are known by a different name because of where they occur. They are tropical storms that form over the Northwest Pacific Ocean, specifically to the east of the dateline. Their distinctive traits lie in their low pressure centers and high winds spinning in a counterclockwise direction. On the other hand, cyclones share the same tropical storm DNA, but they form over the South Pacific and Indian Ocean. They rotate in a clockwise direction due to the Coriolis effect, which is the force exerted by the Earth's rotation. Fun fact, cyclones can also be extratropical, forming outside the tropics, and have a completely different structure. We've also discovered that both typhoons and cyclones are categorized by the same scale, the Saffir-Simpson scale, which ranks them in 5 categories based on their wind speeds. Both can cause immense damage, with Category 5 being the most destructive. As for naming these weather phenomena, it's all about making communication easier and reducing confusion. Each region has its own list of names that are used in rotation. Names are often retired when storms cause significant damage or loss of life. In the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific, the names are alphabetical, while in Asia, the names are contributed by Asian nations and are not in alphabetical order. While the names and locations of these storms may differ, their impacts are universally understood. They can cause heavy rainfall, storm surges, high winds, and in some cases, tornadoes. The primary difference between them lies in their geographical location and the direction of their rotation. So next time you hear about a typhoon or cyclone on the news, you'll know exactly what they're talking about. Armed with this knowledge, you can appreciate the power of these natural phenomena and the importance of understanding their behavior. Remember, knowledge equips us to better prepare and respond to these forces of nature. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. We hope you learned something.